Is the Prachand Light Combat Helicopter truly a game changer for Indian Armed Forces, especially the Air Force in high altitude? Joining me on this India Today special broadcast is Air Chief Marshal Fali Homi Major, former Chief of the Air Staff, an accomplished helicopter pilot who's flown extensively in high altitude areas. Sir, welcome on Battle Cry. When I met and interviewed you first, you were commanding the Leh base in late 1990s, early 2000s. You have tremendous experience in high altitude flying. How would you rate Prachand's performance in high altitude areas, whether it's Kargil, Siachen on one side, eastern Ladakh or the northeast on the other?
Gaurav, the LCH, the Prachand, was basically designed and manufactured to address conflict zones and areas of operations, high altitude areas of operation, like you mentioned, Kargil and our northern sectors, which are, in the altitude range of 15 to 20,000 feet. And from what I've heard about the trials, etc., which have been carried out, and the deployment of this helicopter at those altitudes at Leh and other high altitude advanced landing grounds, it has performed magnificently. I'm not very sure about at what stage the Prachand is in as far as the weapon integration and the many weapons it is supposed to have with it. Otherwise, it is a very well designed helicopter for those altitudes.
Air Chief Marshal Major, the Indian Air Force has those massive Apache helicopters hailed as the flying tanks. The IAF flies those aging Mi-35s. They couldn't operate in high altitude in Kargil in 1999. And now the IAF is flying the Prachands. In your appreciation, the made in India Prachand, how do they compare to the heavier attack helicopters?
The LCH is by its very name, a light combat helicopter, and has been designed, as I said earlier, for mainly for high altitude operations. The Apache, on the other hand, is a more powerful attack helicopter with a greater weapon and payload, and has also been operating in our area of operation for a few years now. However, when you talk of altitudes, I'm not very sure about how efficient, a standalone operation of a Apache would be at high altitudes for, starting the engines, etc., as compared to the LCH. Because to be fair, the Apache was not basically designed for these altitudes. In that respect, I think the LCH scores over it for operations in those high altitude areas. Now, you spoke of the Mi-24, Mi-25, Mi-35. Now, in today's environment, I think they're best left alone to the planes.
Okay, and if we were to talk numbers and orders that have just been placed with HAL, given HAL's track record, in your appreciation, can they keep up with deliveries? Are you concerned about deliveries and spares and maintenance? Given what the Air Chief recently said, of course, that was in connection with the Tejas light combat aircraft. But what is your appreciation, sir?
I would certainly mention here that while placing large orders is fine, the manufacturer should be capable of timelines. The manufacturer should also be capable of supply chain support. And most importantly, while you turn out a helicopter and you put it in squadron service, it needs to be fully prepared and operational for the roles it is designed for. And for that, every weapon which has been incorporated or on this helicopter as per the air staff requirements needs to be operational, available, and functional at all times. Otherwise, you can't call it an attack helicopter.
Point, sir. So it's not just the issue of supplies of the helicopters initially, but supply chain management, helicopters, spares, weapons, systems, and that too in diverse battlefields from Siachen and Eastern Ladakh to Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh. So far, I mean, the number of helicopters that the Indian Air Force flies is inventory management, supply chain management, and coordination with HAL. Is that a cause for concern?
Absolutely. There is no doubt in my mind that HAL will have to gear up and speed up not just production, but everything that they do. Because unless that is done, as I said, delivering an aeroplane is not just enough. The delivered aircraft or the helicopter should be fit for the role for which it was designed and bought and procured. Absolutely. I mean, they have a lot of work ahead of them. There are a lot of changes, perhaps, but that is best known to the to HAL how to do it. But I would say that they definitely need to wake up and speed up their production.
Oh, absolutely, sir. And we are told there are reports that seem to indicate that some foreign countries are extremely interested. They've shown keen interest in the light combat helicopter. Should the manufacturers, given the current scenario, whether it's at LAC or LOC or counter-terror operations, even as we speak, we are told in the hills around Katwa, there's an operation that's underway. Should the manufacturers and Air Force focus on domestic use first, foreign supplies if there are firm orders, or simultaneously look at exports because that gives India a great name and also service the requirements within?
You see, exports and local demands depends totally on the capability of the manufacturer. If he has the capability of meeting both requirements, fine. But otherwise, he should wait for the domestic use of this helicopter, some hours of flying, and as to how well it is serving the country's air force before it goes across to any other air force. Because I mean, you don't want egg on your face if she doesn't perform there.
And the foreign components in the helicopter, there are some reports that say close to 40%, some say close to 50% or thereabouts of foreign components. Can that adversely impact our war-fighting capabilities? I want to take you back in history, when the Sea King and Sea Harrier fleets had to be grounded post-Pokhran because of restrictions. Of course, we've had a great equation with France. That hasn't been a problem. But with the Safran engine and components, could that be an issue?
Till such time we develop our own capability within the country for engine manufacture and the kinds of engines that we want, you will perforce be dependent on imports. Now, now that depends on how well we handle the diplomatic scene to maintain, a seamless supply chain, etc., from these countries. But the sooner we start thinking on the lines of designing and manufacturing the aero engines which are required for your helicopters, the transport aircraft, the fighters, or whatever it is, the better it would be for the country. Because you cannot, given the present world order, it would be very difficult to predict whether you can rely on any other country for your requirements within.
Air Chief Marshal Fali Major, as always, for joining me here on Battle Cry. Many thanks, sir.